Please be seated. Court is in session.
All right. Jurors, I appreciate your patience. Mr. Alessi, why don't you hold the exhibit up for the jurors, please? All right, jurors, that's the back of the sweatshirt that was shown to Dr. Wolfe. Okay, thank you. Why don't you go ahead and put it back in the bag? So, jurors, I instruct you that those holes were made by the criminalist, Ms. Harnett, during the course of her inspection and sampling of the sweatshirt back on May 18th, 2023. Okay? So, I know your lunches are here, but I think Mr. Yannetti, your next witness, please.
John Tedeman.
Okay, you're gonna step up, face the clerk, and raise your right hand.
You solemnly swear the evidence you give to the court and jury in the case now here to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Go ahead, Mr. Yannetti, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir. In a good loud voice, would you please state your name and spell your last name?
Sure. My name is John Tedeman. It's Tedeman.
Do you work, sir?
I do.
What do you do for work?
I am a private investigator.
Do you work for someone else or do you have your own firm?
I have my own firm.
What is the name?
Forum Investigations.
And that's F-O-R-U-M?
Correct.
I'd like to ask you a little bit about your education and work history. You're from this area?
Yes, Boston
Where-
proper.
I'm sorry?
Yes, from Boston.
Where did you attend high school?
The Roxbury Latin School,
When did you graduate?
1996.
Where did you go to college?
I went to Princeton University,
What year did you graduate?
2000.
What did you do after graduation from Princeton University?
I became a federal agent.
Where?
The agency or the location?
Oh, I meant the location, sorry.
I started out in Los Angeles and then I was back in Boston.
And what years were you a federal agent in Boston and Los Angeles?
2002 through 2008.
And what agency did you work for?
I worked for the Inspector General for the Social Security Administration, Office of Investigations.
And what type of work did you do in terms of investigations?
We did fraud investigations, identity theft, credit card fraud, fugitive operations, all sorts of things, anything involving a Social Security number, basically.
And why did you leave in 2008?
I went to law school,
Where?
Suffolk,
What year did you graduate from Suffolk Law School?
2013.
And what did you do after graduation from Suffolk Law School?
I've had a small solo law practice and worked as a real estate broker,
And what type of law did you practice?
mostly real estate law.
When did you start Forum Investigations?
In April of 2024.
Are you still practicing as a lawyer?
Not very much, no. I still have my license, but my bar card, but I don't practice much.
All right. How did you become involved in this case?
I was contacted by somebody from your office last Tuesday, I believe, the 3rd.
Okay. And was it explained to you why you were brought in at this late juncture?
Yes, it was explained that there was another investigator who had a health issue and would not be able to testify. So would I be able to help out with a small assignment?
All right. And what were you asked to do?
I was asked to travel to 34 Fairview Road in Canton, and take some measurements and photographs.
Did you agree to do that?
Yes.
When did you go?
On June 3rd, I believe I arrived about 5:30 at 34 Fairview.
Okay, and when you say June 3rd, we are talking about last week,
Yes,
correct?
last week, yes.
Whom did you see when you got there?
One of the homeowners, an older gentleman, greeted me when I pulled in the driveway.
All right, and it was not the Albert family, correct?
It was not.
Did that individual give you permission to enter onto the property?
He did.
What did you bring with you?
I brought an iPhone as a camera, and I brought a wheeled measuring device.
All right, and can you describe what a wheeled measuring device is?
Yeah, it's like a handle with two wheels at the bottom, and in the middle there's like a little odometer that measures feet and inches.
And if we could, Mr. Wolfe, could we display the photo of the front of 34 Fairview that's already in evidence with the court's permission?
Yes.
And what exhibit number is that, Mr. Wolfe? 46? Do you see exhibit 46 on the screen, sir?
I do.
Do you recognize that?
I do.
What do you recognize that to be?
That is 34 Fairview Road in Canton.
When you got to 34 Fairview Road in Canton on June 3rd, did you make note of the various entrances to the residence on the front, from the front of the house?
I did.
Could you describe those for the jury?
Yes, on the left side center of the building, there's what I would call the front door, up those 4 steps, I guess. Then if you were to look farther to the right, there at the end of the main building, there's another door, which I guess is the second front door or side door.
And with regard to that door, is it fair to say that faces outward, faces toward the road?
It does. It faces directly towards the road.
Okay, continue, please.
And then past that to the right, there are the windows. And then if you can see the little red line, that is a side door that goes into the garage. Yes, right there.
It's been highlighted there?
Yes.
Okay. And then there are obviously the 2 garage doors.
Then the 2 garage car doors, yes.
4 cars to enter. Okay.
Yes.
We can take that down. Mr. Wolfe, and put the lights on. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Sir, I've placed a photograph in front of you. Can you identify that for the jury?
Yes, that appears to be a photograph that I took of the side front door, the secondary front door, the garage door, and the 2 car doors to the garage.
Okay. Particularly with regard to the side pedestrian entrance into the garage, the red door that you identified in the previous exhibit. Does that photograph fairly and accurately represent the layout of the house in terms of the outside and the entrances that you've previously testified to?
Yes, it does.
I would offer that, Your Honor.
All right, can I see those, please, sir?
I am still here and I am still listening. I did fix my heater. And I'm just heating up another bowl of soup. For some reason, my heater had gone off. Yeah, I wondered why it was so cold. So this is the private eye. Sidebar swoop. Where are you? There you are.
Sidebar swoop, it's in your sight. Like and subscribe. Oh, don't be shy.
I thought they would have put Rentschler on after Wolfe, but apparently not. Oh, that chick in the far. You see where? Oh, you can't. Can you see my? Yeah, you can. Yeah, you see it. This chick here. She's weird. She's like an ex-girlfriend of John's from like 20 years ago. Yeah. Nah. Not sure who those two are. I don't know anyone other than Peggy there and Paul. I'm not sure why Paul isn't across the road. Oh, there goes my soup. I'll be back in a sec.
Okay, Mr. Wolfe, whenever you're ready, if you can display that portion.
Oh, so should this be called sidebar soup? I know I'm an idiot.
Do you see what has been?
So I'm going to ask you to take that down. Folks, we're going to take the luncheon break at this point.
Oh my God. What the fuck? What the actual? Oh, okay. This seems to be going well. You're very quiet in chat.
You may be seated.
All right, so we'll fix that during the luncheon break, Ms. Giannetti, to what I said. All right, so can we get Dr. Lapasada in here? We'll do a very brief voir dire of her.
You right there, Phil?
Now you're going to step up, face the clerk, and raise your right hand, please.
Do you solemnly swear the evidence you give to the court in the case now hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, good afternoon, doctor.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
We're going to do a brief voir dire, okay?
No problem.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Jackson, foundation on just those 2 points, please. Sure.
Your Honor, for purposes of expediting, does the court wish for me to go through the foundation of the doctor's education, training, and background and experience, which is going to take a minute?
Yeah, no, just focus on the foundation for the dog bites and focus on the foundation for what's been termed to be perhaps biomechanical engineering evidence, those 2 areas. And if there is support or methodology in Dr. Lapasada's resume to point to exactly where that is, okay? And I expect this whole voir dire should take no more than 15 minutes.
I'll do my best, Your Honor. Doctor, could you please state your name for the record? Spell your last name into the record, please.
Yes, Dr. Elizabeth Lapasada. That's spelled L-A-P-O-S-A-T-A.
Dr. Lapasada, what do you do for a living?
I'm a medical doctor subspecializing in forensic pathology.
Dr. Lapasada, I'm going to move very, very quickly past the bulk of your training and experience over decades. I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions. Where did you get your medical degree?
University of Maryland School of Medicine.
And do you have any subordinate degrees to your medical degree?
Yes, I have board certifications in anatomic and forensic pathology.
How long have you had those board certifications?
Like 35, 40 years.
Have you ever worked as a medical examiner in any capacity?
Yes, I have.
Have you ever worked as a chief medical examiner for any agency or governmental agency or state?
Yes, I have.
Describe that for the court, please.
I was a chief medical examiner for the state of Rhode Island for 12 years.
How many autopsies would you say in general that you have conducted yourself?
Over 3,000.
How many autopsies in your experience as a supervisor in one capacity or another would you say you've supervised over your tenure?
Over 7,000.
Of those 7,000 that you have supervised, have any of those dealt with motor vehicle incidents?
Many.
Have any of those dealt with motor vehicle and pedestrian incidents?
Many.
Give me an idea, if you have a number in mind, how many motor vehicle pedestrian autopsies you have been involved with, either directly or from a supervisory standpoint.
Hundreds, over 500 at least.
Do you have a significant background and training in the cause and manner of death?
Yes, I do.
Is that the main goal or the main job or duty performed by a medical examiner?
Yes, it is.
Is it also significant in terms of supervising other subordinate medical examiners who may work under your charge?
Yes, you have to make sure they're doing it right.
Is there a methodology that you have employed and that is standard in the industry to employ, including differential diagnoses and inferential thinking in terms of coming to conclusions related to manner and cause of death?
Yes.
Can you explain that for the court in brief, please? I know you probably have a very lengthy explanation.
Okay.
Do it as briefly as you can, with being as succinct as you can.
Certainly, to determine cause of manner and death, we look at scene investigation, autopsy findings, police and witness statements, and medical history. And using that information, we come up with a differential diagnosis or a list of things that might have happened to that person to cause them to die. And from that list, then we see where all the science and all the data, which one it supports. So we've looked at several different things. I always told my staff, I said, how can we be wrong? What else could this be? So you have to make what in medicine is called a differential diagnosis and then see what the facts support.
Did you employ a differential diagnosis in this case?
Yes, I did.
Do you have to be at the scene in order to understand or analyze information that you get in a police report or photographs or things of that nature?
No, then we use the police investigation and scene investigation, crime lab reports, photographs taken by the crime lab, by the police at the scene.
Have you qualified as a expert forensic and anatomical pathologist in other courts in Massachusetts and other states?
Yes, I have.
Approximately how many times would you say you've qualified?
Hundreds.
I want to talk for a specific for a second about a specific area of interest for the court. Were you provided information and photographs of John O'Keefe's arm and his arm injuries included with the rest of the autopsy information that you received?
Yes.
Were you asked to make a determination about the nature of the wounds specific to his right arm? I know that there's other injuries to Mr. O'Keefe, but I'd like to relegate your attention to the right arm.
Yes, absolutely. That's what the forensic pathologist does.
Without telling me what your opinion was, were you able to come to an opinion or conclusion about the source of those injuries?
Yes, I was.
What methodology did you employ to come to that opinion or conclusion, or those opinions and conclusions?
My experience and knowledge and training, along with the appearance of the wounds on the right arm, which fit a pattern, and then knowing that it fits a pattern, then I can try to look for, okay, what is the item that caused this pattern? And that would be part of the differential diagnosis that I've used for many, many years in making diagnoses and determinations.
Have you ever been trained in pattern recognition?
Yes.
In what capacity?
Oh, as a forensic pathologist and medical examiner, a large amount of our work has to do with recognizing pattern injuries, because that's so important, because it gives us an idea of what might have caused that injury. And then that's clearly of a lot of importance to the police and the investigators as they're trying then to say, well, what could have caused that injury? And so the forensic pathologist could say, well, I think it was X or Y. Then they can carry out their investigation armed with that information as to what might have caused the injury on the body.
Is there such a thing in the world of pathologists as medical literature or academic literature that deals with pattern recognition?
Yes.
Are you familiar with some or most of those publications?
Absolutely.
Have you ever yourself taught classes on pattern recognition?
Yes.
At what level? High school, graduate school,
At
medical
the
school?
medical school level.
How often have you taught courses on pattern recognition?
Oh, at least a handful.
When was the last time you taught a course in pattern recognition?
Let's see, last month.
Do any of the courses that you've either taken, well, let's take them one at a time. Have any of the courses that you've ever taken dealt with wound pattern recognition as it relates to animal wounds
Courses that I've taken,
that you have taken?
it's part of our basic training and understanding of a forensic pathologist. The board exams we take test for that. Those injuries are described in our basic forensic pathology and medicine textbooks. They appear continually in our medical and scientific journals.
Is that an important skill set to develop, wound pattern recognition as it pertains to animals as a forensic pathologist?
Absolutely.
Do any of those academic courses that you've either taken or reference works that you just referred to, do any of those deal with dog bites and claw marks specifically?
Oh, yes, they do.
In the course or courses that you have taught related to wound pattern recognition, have you ever taught on the subject of dog bite wounds and the recognition of dog bite wounds?
Yes, I have.
When was the last time you did that?
Let's see, it would be in the course in the medical school, would have been several years ago.
Doctor, with regard to staying with dog bite wounds specifically, have you ever performed an autopsy that specifically dealt with dog bite wounds, known dog bite wounds?
Yes,
So you've seen them in person.
yes, I have.
Have you ever been qualified in any court in the land, state or federal court, on the issue of wound pattern recognition as it pertains to dog bites?
Yes.
When was that?
The last one I can recall was a federal case involving questions of a police dog.
Did you engage, in that case, did you engage in a differential diagnosis to determine, in your opinion and conclusion, your expert opinion and conclusion, the source of the wounds that you saw?
Yes.
Did the court qualify you to speak on that issue in court?
Yes,
Did you, in fact, testify in furtherance of your opinions and conclusions in that case?
I did.
I want to turn for a second to motor vehicle accidents or motor vehicle incidents. Do you also, some of the same questions, have you also performed autopsies on known motor vehicle pedestrian incidents?
Yes.
How many times would you say you've performed an autopsy on those issues?
Hundreds, maybe even 1,000.
Is that a relatively common occurrence, as sad as it may be, motor vehicle pedestrian incidents in the field of forensic pathology?
Yes, it is, unfortunately.
Have you performed autopsies personally as well as supervised autopsies on motor vehicle pedestrian incidents?
Yes.
And what methodology do you employ in furtherance of coming to opinions and conclusions regarding cause and manner of death specific to motor vehicle pedestrian incidents?
Well, we look at the scene investigation. We look at what the motor vehicle looked like. We look at the hospital records, the autopsy, and then trying to understand how the injuries that the pedestrian sustained, what those mechanisms were, and how the injuries show that that person interacted with the motor vehicle.
In doing so, in coming up with injury mechanism analysis, is it important to look at and analyze the actual vehicle that is allegedly involved?
Yes, you want to look at photographs of that or see it in person.
Is that part of the normal methodology that is employed in the field?
Yes, you must look at the photographs. You must see what the vehicle looks like.
Do you also look at the other side of that handshake? In other words, look at the body of the individual that was, in your case, killed, the decedent, in order to marry the two and determine whether or not the cause and manner of death had something to do with the motor vehicle, a motor vehicle impact?
Absolutely.
Describe that for us, please. What are some of the things that you look for that's part of the normal methodology that a forensic pathologist employs?
Well, when we examine a fatality from a motor vehicle, we want to try to understand what led up to it, how the impact occurred, and then what happened after. So we would study information about the injuries to see if we can relate them to certain pattern injuries that would be on the car. There are also evidence of transfer of energy and injuries that can result from the transfer of energy. So using the body, looking at the scene and the vehicle, understanding the motions of the vehicle and how they would have produced or would not have produced certain injuries on the body.
I'm going to take them one at a time. With regard to animal wounds or dog bites, were you able, in this case, using differential diagnoses, using inferential thinking, and using the skills that you've developed over decades of your education, training, and background, were you able to, without telling me what the conclusion is, were you able to come to a conclusion or opinion as to whether or not the wounds that you saw on John O'Keefe's right arm were consistent or inconsistent with a dog bite or claw marks?
I was able to come to a definite scientific conclusion.
And is that conclusion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
Is it to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes, it is.
Is it consistent with the training and methodology that you've employed over decades?
It is.
I'm going to ask you the same series of questions with regard to the motor vehicle incident. Did you review the autopsy report in an effort to look at John O'Keefe's entire body and all of the injuries that he sustained, not simply his right arm?
I looked at everything.
In doing so, were you able to come to an opinion or a conclusion as to the mechanism of injury and whether or not his injuries in total were consistent or inconsistent with a motor vehicle incident or impact?
I was able to come to a scientific conclusion.
And without telling me what that scientific conclusion is at this point, did you employ the same methodology that you've explained to the court earlier concerning differential diagnoses, inferential thinking, and decades of training, the education, training, and background that you've described for the court in coming to your conclusions about whether or not the cause and manner of death was consistent or inconsistent with a motor vehicle impact?
Yes.
Your Honor, is there any area that I have not covered to the court's satisfaction since something?
So I'll let Mr. Brennan ask questions. I may have a couple of questions.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Dr. La Posada.
Good afternoon.
If we could start with dog bites.
Yes.
Did you have any specific training in wound pattern recognition regarding dog bites?
Yes, it's in our literature standard textbook. It's standard information that is needed to be a forensic pathologist.
When did you receive training regarding pattern recognition of dog bites?
Oh, beginning when I took my board, starting in 1983.
And what did that entail?
It entailed reading literature. It entailed reading the standard forensic pathology and medicine textbooks. And it is a sub-part of understanding pattern injuries. Dog bite injuries are described in all our journals and all our standard forensic textbooks.
Other than reading about it when you were studying for your boards, did you have any practical experience where you were engaging in the field in pattern recognition analysis regarding dog bites early on?
Yes, I've had many cases where there have been dog bite injuries.
When you were studying for your boards, were you doing that, or after you completed your boards?
I'm telling you that that it's such a basic part that during studying for boards, it's a section that we study. And I, of course, had many cases since then.
Did you receive any education past reading literature for the boards, where you took classes, seminars, where it taught specifically wound pattern recognition regarding dog bites?
It's all part of wound pattern recognition. It's usually included in literature. If there are lectures about patterned injuries, it's a subset of pattern injuries like hammer injuries, like gunshot wounds, like baseball bat injuries. There's a huge number of types of patterned injuries that are part and parcel of what a medical examiner has to understand and diagnose.
Do you remember taking any specific classes or any specific training about wound pattern recognition relative to specifically dog bites?
Yes, it's in all the literature that I keep up with.
Did you take any training or did you attend any classes that involved wound pattern recognition of dog bites?
Yes, it's often included in our seminars and case reports.
Do you list any of those classes or seminars on your resume?
That I took? No.
Can you identify one of those classes, where it was, when it was, who taught it, what the name of it was, regarding wound pattern recognition relative to dog bites?
I can't give you a specific time and date.
Can you remember the name of the last class or seminar that you took or completed that has to do with wound pattern recognition relative to dog bites?
I can't recall.
Is there anything in your report that identifies any of your specific education or training on wound pattern recognition as it relates to dog bites?
It's in my CV. It's basic knowledge that a forensic pathologist has to have.
I will ask you about the CV, but Dr. Lapasada, I just wanted to ask you about your report first. Is there anything in your report that points to any specific training
In the report that I wrote on
in your
this
report
case?
relative to wound pattern recognition as to dog bites? Is there anything in your report that identifies that for us?
In my report, I put together the case of what happened to Mr. O'Keefe.
Okay. As far as your experience, though, do you ever make any note in your report about your specific experience and training about wound pattern recognition for dog bites in your report?
No, it's not appropriate.
In your CV, is there anywhere you can point to us where you had specific training for wound pattern recognition relative to dog bites, where we can see that on your CV?
No, it doesn't say dog bite training specifically, no.
Do you have anything on your CV that specifically talks about wound pattern recognition for animals?
Those are usually classified within other pattern recognition.
Do you have anything specific that would alert us in your CV that you've had such specific training on wound pattern recognition for animals?
Other than I've passed my board exams and have practiced for 40 years.
Have you provided a list of cases where you have testified in court specifically about wound pattern recognition of dog bites?
I don't know if I have given a list. I don't keep those kinds of lists.
You mentioned one case about law enforcement dogs in federal court. When was that case?
Several years ago.
How long would you say, if you had a guess?
How long was it ago?
Yes, please.
A couple years, around COVID time.
Did you testify in that case about law enforcement police dogs?
I testified about an individual who had injuries, and there was a question as to whether Canine Caper, who was the dog's name, inflicted any injuries on this person.
And this was in Boston federal court?
Springfield, yeah, Boston, right.
Is there a difference between law enforcement dog bites and domestic dog bites?
They have the same kind of dog jaw.
So you would say
They're
that-
taught differently, obviously.
Would the wound pattern recognition be the same or different if you were looking at it from a law enforcement dog perspective or a domestic dog perspective?
The dog would be the same.
Do you have any other cases that you've testified about wound pattern recognition relative to dog bites?
I've testified in hundreds of cases. I can't say that I remember any particular ones.
Would you be able to identify any of those for us today?
No, too many.
I'll ask you about accident reconstruction experience. And I mean this respectfully, you don't have a biomechanical or a medical engineering type background, do you?
No, I'm not a mechanical engineer.
You're not certified by ACTAR or any of those type of organizations, are you, doctor?
No, I relate the injuries on the body to the motor vehicle.
Have you ever been to a car collision scene and investigated a car collision scene firsthand?
Yes.
And when you've done that, do you have a chance to look at all of the physical materials, the properties?
Well, when I go to a scene of a motor vehicle fatality, I look at the pieces that are scattered around, I look at the body, I look at blood stain patterns, I look at damage to the car, and then the body would go back for the examination at the medical examiner's office, and there would be further examination of the scene by accident reconstructionists and examination of the automobile by specialists who could figure out what motor vehicles do. So it's a part of correlating the injuries to the vehicle.
You've never written an accident reconstruction report yourself, have you?
No, that's not what I do.
I understand. In this case, what materials did you look at? Because I don't think in your report it mentions the materials that you studied. What materials did you study as the basis for any potential opinions regarding accident reconstruction?
Well, so you would like for me to tell you everything I studied in this case?
Yes,
I have my list here. Should I read
that's fine
from
by
that?
me.
Okay. I studied the autopsy report, neuropathology report, toxicology, and associated paperwork from the medical examiner's office. I studied 104 autopsy and neuropathology photographs, 70 additional autopsy photos taken by Trooper Watson. I studied Mr. O'Keefe's medical records from the Canton Fire Department and EMS run sheet. I studied the Good Samaritan medical records that also included 35 photographs of the body. I looked at evidence of Mr. O'Keefe's clothing, blue jeans, t-shirt, sweatshirt, boxers, and sneakers. I'm sorry. Thank you. I looked at photographs that were taken at the crime lab of various pieces of plastic, black, red, and clear. I studied photographs of the outside of Ms. Reed's SUV as it was parked at the police garage. I studied the Canton Police incident report, about 100 photographs taken by Canton Police of the outside scene. So that gave me a very good idea of what happened to Mr. O'Keefe.
Were you involved in a case, Commonwealth versus Daniel Tompkins?
Remind me about that. I've been involved in hundreds of cases.
Yes, you have. This case was in Franklin County Superior Court. It was a case where you had an opportunity to present testimony and regarding blood spatter, which you have been qualified expert for. And that, I'm sorry.
Well, that doesn't quite say what I did, but I remember the case you're talking about.
Did you attempt, or was there an attempt to have you qualified to talk about accident reconstruction in that case?
No, I'm not an accident reconstructionist.
And do you remember whether or not there was an attempt that was denied to try to have you talk about accident reconstruction in that case?
I have no idea. I'm not an accident reconstructionist.
Okay. Do you have anything on your CV specifically that offers any background on accident reconstruction or accident reconstruction type classes or seminars?
I don't think so.
All right, thank you, Dr. Laposada.
No, you're welcome.
So can I just ask Dr.
Yes.
Laposada about, you said you've been involved in autopsies with dog bites.
Yes.
How many?
I've done thousands of cases, probably 50 or so. It's not always the cause of death. And then I've supervised maybe 75 more where that dog bites were involved in the case.
When was the last one?
Let's see, probably 2 years ago.
Okay. Any questions based on my questions? All right. You are all set. I'm going to ask you to step down, Dr. Lepisata. We'll get to you sometime this afternoon. okay?
Thank you, Your Honor.
I do want to give everybody a break, including counsel. Can we do less than 5-minute arguments on this?
Your Honor, I'll make this very brief.
Okay.
Dr. Alongside is eminently qualified to speak to both the issue of wound pattern recognition as it relates to dog bites, specifically, as well as cause and manner of death as it relates to vehicle pedestrian incidents or impacts. The doctor has an incredibly impressive resume, just a touch of which we reviewed during the course of this voir dire for her qualifications. But with regard to the dog bite specifically, she talked about the differential diagnosis that she undertakes and undertook in this case. She talks about the inferential thinking that she undertook in this case. She talks about how that is the proper methodology in the scientific community and specific to the forensic pathology community in order to come to a determination about wounds and the source of wounds, i.e., was it a dog, was it another animal, was it another source, was it lacerations versus abrasions, things of that nature. She's obviously done, as she indicated, thousands, if not climbing real close to 10,000 autopsies that she's either supervised or that she's conducted herself. She actually has, notably, as per the court's last question, she's actually undertaken personally somewhere close to, I thought it was probably 5 autopsies herself dealing with dog bites. They're not always the cause of death, but sometimes it's attendant to the injuries that led to a different cause of death. But she's undertaken at least 50, or that's what she estimates, 50 of those autopsies herself. She's seen dog bites, she's seen dog wounds, she engages in pattern recognition. She also teaches classes on pattern recognition as it pertains to dog bites, and she's eminently qualified to speak to that in this particular case. She has been able to come to an opinion and conclusion as to whether or not the injuries to John O'Keefe's arm are consistent or inconsistent with dog bites, and I expect that she would then give that opinion and conclusion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty and to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty. As it relates to her differential diagnosis and her ultimate conclusions concerning the automobile impact, obviously, many more autopsies dealing with that because it's more common. She also engaged in the exact same differential diagnosis. She has training. The subfield of, or the sub-issue of vehicle pedestrian impacts is included and subsumed within much of the medical literature that she's been taught on, going all the way back to the 1980s, dealing with her boards, and she's consistently passed her boards. She's consistently kept up with the literature. She's consistently engaged in autopsies herself, so she has firsthand training. She also trains other medical professionals, other doctors, other medical examiners, and she supervises other medical examiners. She's been the chief medical examiner for an entire state. I cannot imagine somebody more eminently qualified to talk about the 2 subjects that she's been called to talk, well, she's called to talk about several other subjects, but these 2 subjects that's before the bench right now than somebody with Dr. Lapisada's qualifications. I will submit on the voir dire that we just completed.
All
Your
right,
Honor.
thank you. Mr. Brennan.
I do not think that Dr. Lapisada has articulated the experience the way it's been summarized. She could not provide any specific training other than her boards and her references to literature. She could not articulate one single class or seminar that she took that pertained to differential diagnosis of dog bite injuries. She has no specific memory of having any type of experience in differential diagnosis as far as being in a training, seminar, or advanced education. She has the experience of a medical examiner who has seen what she believes to be dog bites in the past. She has no publications or references that she has studied the issue of differential diagnosis or pattern wound recognition relative to dog bites. If we look at the standard Dr. Russell employed, Dr. Lapisada does not have any of the merit to be an expert in dog bites. While she has taught, we did not hear about anything in particular that she has taught about specific pattern wound recognition analysis regarding dog bites. She is an experienced medical examiner, has a wealth of experience, past experience in autopsies, but she has no experience that is a basis for her as an expert in being a dog bite expert. Particularly, she mentions one case that she's testified in federal court that we've heard of today, and she has nothing whatsoever in her report or resume to establish that she has used, studied, and knows this methodology. In fact, her CV and her report don't have any basis for one to look at and see that she has any specific experience in dog bites. And so Dr. LaPosada, from the Commonwealth's perspective, should not be able to give an opinion regarding or about whether or not the wounds on Mr. O'Keefe were caused by a dog. She simply does not have the training and experience and education and methodology to make her a so-called dog bite expert. Regarding accident reconstruction, she said it best. She is not an accident reconstructionist. She saw some of the materials in this case, but it is a fraction of the materials in this case. She is not in a position to give an opinion whether or not the wounds are consistent with broken taillight. There is nothing we see on her CV. There's nothing we see in her report. There's nothing we heard on direct examination that she has any experience in breaking glass, breaking plastics, and the causation of wounds. It also overlooks the fact that the opinion that would be offered would extend beyond just the wounds on the arm. It would extend to a general opinion that he was not involved in a collision, and that's improper. There's no predicate or basis for it. And so based on her testimony and absence of being able to provide any education or experience, she should not be able to testify about either of these two matters.
Okay, thank you.
Briefly respond.
Okay.
Very briefly. She was, Mr. Brennan suggests that, well, she's only been qualified in one court, federal court. The federal government, the federal judge that was handling that case qualified her as a dog bite expert in that case. That is not a small thing. That, as a matter of fact, it's a very big thing for Dr. LaPosada and her credentials. In addition, she indicated, contrary to what Mr. Brennan just suggested, she indicated that she has been training on wound pattern recognition as it pertains to dog bites for her entire career, not just when she was studying for her boards, since she's been studying for her boards. And it's been constant and consistent throughout her entire career. She's made these differential diagnoses, she's seen the autopsies, she's seen the wounds during autopsies firsthand, probably 50 or more. She's supervised another 75 or more autopsies dealing with known dog bite wounds. She has the credentials. The court will recall that, for instance, Dr. Isaac Wolfe was called to testify by the Commonwealth. He had absolutely nothing, no credentials whatsoever to talk about wound pattern recognitions. He was a neurosurgeon, and yet he was allowed, over Mr. Alessi's objection, to talk about and to discuss his opinions and conclusions as to the wound pattern on the back of John O'Keefe's head. Certainly, Dr. LaPosada brings much, much, much more to the table than Dr. Isaac Wolfe. I'm not comparing them. They're apples and oranges. Dr. LaPosada is she doesn't have to be a sole dog bite expert to be expert in dog bites. She doesn't have to be Dr. Russell. She just has to have that level of knowledge, that level of skill, that level of expertise that's beyond that of the average layperson in order to opine as an expert on a particular issue. She certainly brings that to the table as it pertains to dog bites, and I think her skill and her education, training, and background certainly speaks to the fact that she has that in spades with regard to motor vehicle pedestrian incidents.
All right.
I'll submit.
Thank you. All right, I'll get your ruling as soon as I can. So we're going to start back up at 2:20, and I expect to go straight through the rest of the afternoon.
All rise for the court, please.